call me surprised, this movie isn't horrible. Morbius stars Jared Leto, Adria Arjona, and Matt Smith. Biochemist Michael Morbius tries to cure himself of a rare blood disease, but he inadvertently infects himself with a form of vampirism instead. Now, Morbius has been delayed 6 times. It actually finished filming in June of 2019, before the pandemic was even a thing, and it was supposed to come out during July of 2020, then obviously 2020 happened. Now we're here, April 1st, 2022. That's pretty crazy. As for how this movie was shaping up to be, the trailers looked like shit. I mean, this movie just did not look any good. None of the trailers sold me at all. I've probably seen that trailer like 10 plus times. They've been showing it on repeat since like 2 years ago. So going into Morbius, my expectations were really low. I mean, was not excited for this movie at all, really. Finally saw it today, and I'm kind of surprised it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, by me saying that, I'm not telling you this is some Avengers Endgame. This is no Spider-Man No Way Home, or even any other comic book movie, The Dark Knight. No, this is not some highly rated comic book movie that I'm going to praise for this entire video. No, but it wasn't that bad. I'll start off with the cast. Jared Leto as Dr. Michael Morbius himself was alright. I mean, Jared Leto is notorious for not being the best person, but as for in this movie, he was okay. Not really that much of an emotional attachment to his character though, and that's in the writing, but him in the performance was fine. Matt Smith, the villain of the movie, however, he chews up the scenery, and you can tell that he's having a fun time. Whether it's him dancing after he just killed a bunch of people, and then just the interactions he has when he is the villain, it just shows that he's having a fun time. And even building off of that, there's actually a good foundation that they build in the beginning of the movie between Matt Smith and Jared Leto. They have a nice brotherly connection between one another. It's a brotherly dynamic, and I thought that it was built on well, and it's a strong aspect of the movie. It wasn't necessarily something that I found myself even getting emotional over by any means, but it was a nice attachment that you could have to the characters, though they are pretty thin. And that's why I'll just get into my big negative with the movie. It's just really bland and dull and generic. It feels like a mid-2000s comic book movie, something that isn't really all that remarkable. And it's very reminiscent of that era with the poor CGI and not the greatest writing and nothing really memorable about the movie. But I'll even go as far as to say, I kind of enjoyed this movie more than the first Venom for sure. Maybe not as much as Venom Let There Be Carnage, but they're actually pretty neck and neck. But continuing with the positives, the setup in the first act wasn't horrible actually. Did it set up an incredibly predictable movie? Yes. I didn't find myself by any means being baffled as to how bad it was. Usually you can tell if a movie is pretty bad, especially within that first half. But for me, it didn't give me too many red flags. And the movie continued to deliver on that level very much so of fine. It wasn't too bad. I didn't find myself hating it, and it was enjoyable enough. I wasn't necessarily bored throughout, but there's not much that is really pulling me back to it. The CGI is pretty off and on. At times it looks like shit, and other times it looks fine. This is yet again another movie where I feel like it could have worked better with an R rating. Might have done a little bit more with the kills, for example. And the kills here, they're kind of bloody, barely pushing that PG-13 rating. That's kind of where my positives end. I know it wasn't much, but then let's get into the negatives. A big issue that this movie has is the editing. It is known knowledge that there was reshoots within the past couple months, weeks even. That's even possibly why it was delayed. And because of how the movie is edited, it's hard to figure out where specific scenes go in the big timeline of this movie. You have the very first scene in this movie. Opens up, they're on this island. It's a scene in the trailer. Where does this scene go in the big timeline? I have no idea. You would think it was going to be one of those scenes where they refer back to it later on in the movie after you get some character growth and development, even though there's not much of it. But no, it almost just seemed like they wanted to put that scene in the trailer just somewhere in the movie so that you'd be like, oh, I wonder where that went. It really didn't make any sense. And this is a little nitpick for me. I never really understood what kind of creature Matt Smith's character is. This isn't a spoiler, he's the villain of the movie. He's going to be some sort of creature to counter Jared Leto's vampire. But all of a sudden in the movie, he's now the main villain. He took some blood formula, basically how Jared Leto got to be a vampire. But you don't necessarily know if Matt Smith is a vampire. Maybe this might have just been a me thing. I didn't really know what kind of creature he was, because he definitely wasn't a vampire. He had similar qualities to Jared Leto's Morbius, but I don't think he was a vampire. And then there's a specific addition to Jared Leto's love interest, her character. They add this minor detail that in the grand scheme of things seemed like it was a big deal, but is very glossed over. It's just about the third act of the movie, and the character does something that really is a red flag. Is it by any means explained though? No, not at all. They never really clarified what it meant, and then at the end of the movie, it is brought up again, and I'm just like, what's going on? I feel like that just goes into the editing again. A lot of the movie just seems like it was cut in the editing room, and then there's pieces to the big puzzle that are missing, and I'm like, where does this go? How does this fit in here? Stuff like that. And then when you get to the final battle, it's basically just a CGI shit show. It actually reminded me of the Black Panther final battle. It's a dark scene, lots of CGI, you can't really tell what's going on. I feel like that goes into the directing. It wasn't directed very well. Just looking at the screen, it just looked like $10 million, and they just threw it all there. And then finally, without getting into spoilers, you get to the end credit scene. Which, by the way, there are 2 end credit scenes, so make sure you stick around for both of them. And honestly, they feel less of end credit scenes and more of like an extension of the movie. But anyway, both of them tie into one another, and they're basically like a continuation of the movie. And again, no spoilers. And they were something. I found myself being confused at the start, then a couple things came back in my memory, and I was like, oh, that makes sense now. But it still just doesn't really line up all that well. Kind of just felt like Sony was like, oh, we need to set up this, so let me put you in here. But I don't necessarily know what to make of them yet. I need to see where they go with it. But all in all, is Morbius the worst movie of the year? No. Is it the best movie of the year? No. It's right about somewhere in the middle there. Definitely more towards the worst of the year side. Like, it's not terrible. It's a fine movie. But is it one that I feel eager to go rewatch? No. Did I hate what I was looking at on the screen? No. Again, it's better than something like Venom. I found myself enjoying this one more. The performances were fine, with Jared Leto not being too bad, and Matt Smith giving a charismatic-ish performance. But the poor editing, bland storytelling, and execution that just feels so reminiscent of other comic book movies, it's just generic and nothing that really stands out. So do I recommend rushing out of your house to go see it? Maybe not. It feels more like a rental. But if you're a Marvel fan, you'll probably enjoy it. Didn't offend me too much, so I would say it's worth your time. Maybe just one watch though. I'm gonna give Morbius a C. So all in all, not terrible, but if you've seen Morbius, make sure to let me know down below in the comments, what did you think of it? I know it might be a little bit of a hot take, my take on the movie. I didn't hate it, but if you liked it, hated it, whatever it is, let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching this review, and if you did enjoy it, consider giving it a like, as well as subscribing and hitting that notification bell to get notified whenever new videos like this go live. As always, look forward to a bunch more videos coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.